We are so excited to have Christine Sarno with us today on the podcast. Christine runs a financial services practice that is dedicated to empowering women in their journey for financial freedom. She focuses on a comprehensive approach to financial planning through wealth management, protecting her clients' loved ones, income and assets, and laying out mindful, intentional strategies in both their personal lives and with their businesses. Christine has over 25 years of leadership experience in media, promotions, and tech in both corporate and startup environments, and she supports her clients as their financial wing woman. Please welcome to the podcast, Christine Sarno.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Hi, Christine.
So nice to meet you.
So nice to meet you.
Thank you so much for spending your time with us and for being here. We're so happy that we found you. We have not talked about finances yet with a guest on this podcast. So we're venturing into a whole new subject matter with you. We're so excited.
I'm honored and so excited to be with you both, and have had a chance to, check out your platforms, listen to your podcast. I love your energy. What you ladies are doing is awesome. So thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. That means so much.
Okay, Christine, you are a financial strategist and a negotiation coach. Can you walk us through what does that actually mean?
I mean, in a nutshell, Alex, thank you for asking that question. Really, I'm kind of like your money wing woman.
Love that.
So to speak. I mean, what I really specialize in doing and what I'm passionate about is supporting women in terms of helping them in terms of income generating opportunities, negotiating compensation packages that's commensurate with their experience and the value that they bring to any work opportunity, right? And that's one side of the equation. And on the other side of the equation, what I want to do is help women understand how we can strategically deploy what we earn, right? Whether it's saving, investing, and really paying our future self as aligned with our goals. How do we do it in such a way that we're well positioned in the future? So that's kind of, in a nutshell, what I love to do.
What made you get into this? What made you want to become a financial planner?
You know what? If I may take a step back, a lot of it has to do with my own upbringing. And to be completely transparent, my mom emigrated from another country when I was very little. When I was 3, my younger sister was 1.5. And she immigrated from Taiwan to the US. And English was a second language for her. And she didn't have any financial resources of her own. And to make matters worse, my dad, unfortunately, had to deal with some of his own demons in his life. He was an alcoholic. He essentially kind of controlled the money, and he controlled mom's life. And so we watched that growing up. When my mom came to the US, no friends, family resources of her own, and she really had to struggle through a very volatile marriage for a number of years. My sister and I, we grew up watching this. And I think the impact for me, especially as the eldest, was, it was a very strong message that I learned early on, and a lesson that I've kind of taken throughout the course of my life, that as a woman, when you do have financial freedom, and that really, I mean, whether it's money that you can use to walk away from a job that's toxic, or a partner in your life that it's not a healthy relationship, it's really about just creating more choices, I think, for women. And so my love for my mother and my passion in terms of helping her over the course of my life as an adult really kind of translates into how I want to help other women.
What a great answer. That 10 out of 10. Yeah, that was very inspirational.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me share that.
Oh, thank you for sharing.
Tina and I are coming from our 20s, which was, we both moved to New York City to pursue musical theater. We both kind of moved in opposite directions. Tina's a makeup artist. She has a solo show. I do a lot of commercials. I do voiceovers, but we're freelancers. And in our 20s, we were true paycheck to paycheck. And people always say that term, but maybe it's an exaggeration. It was definitely not an exaggeration for us. We were truly charging on our credit card until we got the next check, $100 left at the end of the month in New York City, working odd jobs at night, auditioning during the day. And we really should have been saving more. I mean, I look back and I should have been saving more, even if it was $30 a week. I would love to kind of take a step back and get some of your advice for people who really think that they don't have anything to put away right now?
First and foremost, this is not uncommon. And here, I live in Los Angeles, right? I mean, and I am surrounded and work with people kind of in the creative space, right? Whether it's in the film business or, I mean, and you've named even some of these different industries too, right? Where it's one project job or gig to the next, right?
Exactly.
A little bit of feast or famine sometimes. What I'd love to say is let's take a step back and just go, I want to give both of you much credit for following your passions, right? And for pursuing what it is that really drives you, because I truly believe whatever we decide to do, we can figure out how to make an income from it. And when you love what you do, right? I truly believe that allows us to continue to flourish in our lives from a professional standpoint. Work doesn't feel like something that you dread, waking up to every day or going to bed at night thinking about, how you're going to be spending the next day. It's something that you're inspired by. So I do want to give both of you like a virtual high five for pursuing your passion. It's important,
Thank you.
But with that said, and I understand where you're coming from, right? Especially in an expensive city like New York, it's very difficult sometimes to stay within a budget. I would counsel though that, knowing that you might be dealing with variable income, what I always encourage my clients to do is that, especially when the big paychecks come in, is to really take a look at kind of what their monthly expenses are, right? And that's something that we like to do first. I really want my clients to have clarity in terms of what does it cost to run your life on a monthly basis? And we break it down in terms of a budget. And this could be, you can use an app online if that's, something that you love to do. There's so many great apps out there, an Excel spreadsheet, back of the napkin scribble, whatever it is.
I just today downloaded an app called Personal Capital. Have you heard of it?
I haven't heard of Personal Capital.
Okay.
Tell me, do you love it?
I don't know. I just got it today because I was listening to some other podcast about finances, and it was saying this is the app, and they said they got rid of their Quicken and they just switched over to this app. And I use Quicken as well. But
I mean, if it's something, here's the thing. I would say go on to different platforms, try different apps. If that's how you like to kind of stay within an organized budget, but make sure it's something that feels good to you, it works for you, and that you're going to be using it on a consistent basis, right? If someone's not an Excel spreadsheet person and they loved keeping their finances organized on an app or some type of software platform, then do that. Don't use an Excel spreadsheet if you hate looking at it. So,
right.
But my counsel is let's at least have some clarity in terms of what it takes to run your monthly nut, your fixed expenses, rent, or mortgage, groceries, auto expenses like gasoline, whatever it may be, utilities, right? We want to be able to at least turn on the lights and have them go on. That's all good stuff, right? And make sure we identify those are your fixed expenses. You really do have to focus on making sure that you can afford to pay those expenses, right, on a monthly basis. Right. Then the second piece would be your discretionary. What do you spend on your hobbies, dining out, that sort of thing. And what I like to kind of point out is that could be an opportunity for us to pay attention to how much we're actually spending. A lot of times people don't realize, you're calling Uber Eats, right? Or Postmates multiple times a week and how that's adding up. And the idea is understand if we've got some surplus at the end of the month towards savings, right? And if we don't, we might want to take a hard look in terms of how we're spending. And there's really two directions we can go in. We can cut back, which can be hard. And at a certain point, you can only cut back so much, right? Or we might need to think about alternate sources of income, other ways to make money to supplement that. So that's one piece of it, right? And then what I would then counsel is then we move on to building something what is called basically your rainy day fund or your emergency fund, especially when you have variable income. And for most of my clients that work at a company and they get paid W-2 salary, generally I would say, hey, about 3 months of your monthly, because now you know what that number is,
right,
should be sitting in a savings account, right? If you need it. So essentially that's the second step. What can we do? So when the paychecks come in, we want to try to deploy what we can to start building up that emergency fund. So that's now on a parallel path. And we talked a little bit about credit cards, and I do want to touch on that. There's all kinds of different debt out there, but the debt that I despise the most right? Because it really does come back and bite us in the ass. And this is my New York coming out, right? Through high interest, right? High APRs. What ends up happening is that can really kind of derail our savings goals when we're trying to pay down large amounts of credit card debt. So that's the number one priority. And there's different ways that that can be addressed, right? But really, what can we do to try to implement some opportunities to save while simultaneously bringing down debt? And sometimes we just have to figure out how to manage the debt so that we can potentially do both. But it's, it's, again, that's just high level.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have tips, like any just real quick tips on how to start paying off your credit card debt?
Well, I would say it depends on kind of how much you have, right? But I would generally like to advise my clients to see if there's an opportunity to transfer any of that debt to a 0% interest credit card where you can actually transfer some of it. It buys you some time. Now, the idea behind doing something like that generally is that you want to try to kind of keep to the minimum payment on those cards, but we want to focus on paying down the higher interest balances first. So the credit cards that might be at 16, 17, 18%, essentially we want to focus on getting rid of that debt, then working on the next card with the next highest debt and so forth. And if we can transfer some of that over to a 0% interest rate card, that gives you a little bit of time, right, to be able to organize it. Now, there's also great platforms out there. Credit Karma is one, which can help us consolidate our credit card debt, will help refinance credit card debt. So
that's awesome.
Yes.
What would be, you kind of touched on this, but what would be your first step? So say someone's finances, life, career is in complete disarray this year after the pandemic. Like they have credit card debt, they are just finally got a job, they haven't been saving. Like, what's the first thing to focus on?
You know what? The first thing I would say to focus on is if you've got your health, especially after this last year, gratitude, right? That you're healthy and that you have the ability to wake up the next day, right? And be able to do the things that you'd like to do and you need to do. So I would say trying to come to just at least, and this is important to me too, a very strong mental mindset about how to address all this. So gratitude, number one. And I think the second piece too is to maybe kind of stop. Everyone's situation is different, but maybe kind of stop and reassess, right? I have noticed in working with clients that a lot of people have in this last year who have lost their jobs have decided, you know what? My life was I was stressed out to the max at a job that I really despised, right? And I have now learned to simplify, kind of cut back on a lot of expenses that we didn't necessarily need to have in our life. And it feels good to maybe live off of less. Maybe it's time, to move someplace where the cost of living is not so expensive. Like I would say there's kind of different ways that you can look at this. But essentially, I would say, hey, based on your question, I'm going to make the assumption that you're saying somebody has been out of work, still kind of dealing with debt.
Exactly.
So I would say the first step too is to kind of really kind of get a sense of, hey, at this stage of the game, is there an opportunity to collect unemployment? So just see if there's an opportunity to bring some income in while you're looking for work. I would also say, while you're looking for work within your respective field, if things are kind of dry right now, there's other ways to make income. Now, I've spoken to clients that have done all sorts of things this last year, and I would even recommend doing things maybe that you might enjoy. I mean, I have taken Uber rides with, basically somebody who was an engineer, but he just loves people. And he still wants the ability to have flexibility in his schedule, make some money before he lands his next gig. And he just loves talking to people. I've also spoken with somebody who owns a property here in Southern California, which is kind of a small ranch. And so what she's actually done is created a fun Airbnb experience on her ranch. She also has she has these baby goats.
It's awesome.
Raised goats, just a handful of goats. But what they've done on weekends is created Airbnb experiences and that sort of thing. So there are so many different ways to create some supplemental income while you're looking for something else, right, that you enjoy. So I would say, the opportunity to be a little bit more creative on that front, right? Because income is important, right? Still need to pay the bills. And I think also too, it's kind of taking a look again at what does it cost to run my life on a monthly basis? Is there some room to scale back on some stuff for now, right? So that I can feel a little bit more secure about my financial situation until the next job comes in. So was that helpful?
Oh, so helpful.
helpful.
I want to speak to anyone listening after this year who just feels like they are in a black hole and starting from scratch. And okay, so then when we get to the point, this person gets to a point where, okay, we can save, I can put some money away, I can invest. I'd love for you to take us through kind of the best places for us to be putting our money and speak and kind of take us through it in the simplest, most basic terms, as if we're hearing it for the first time. Just for anyone who's fresh, who's going to start saving for the first time, who's going to start an investment account for the first time. I actually just started working with Elvest, which I love them. Do you like Elvest?
Elvest is a great platform. Absolutely.
Okay, I'm so happy to hear that.
Yes. And you know what? And again, I'm in such alignment with what they're doing because it's really about just empowering women financially. Super, super important,
It is. Yeah. I love all the values behind it. It's so easy to change the amount per month you put in. If you have like a lower income month, you can change it really quickly. There's an app. It feels very safe. I love it so much.
And I love the fact that you're already taking steps to basically get educated, right? And take control of your finances, especially as it relates to investing in the market, So, kudos to you. Congratulations on that. So just in terms of when you're saying kind of investing, saving, and then investing. So again, my basic rule of thumb is make sure that you've got an emergency fund in place. For me, this is my philosophy before we start deploying money into the market and other investments. And the reason why I say this is because a lot of us don't realize that if we're out of work for a couple of months, we are going to have to tap into that fund. If we have to book a last minute emergency flight somewhere, right? It would be ideal to be able to, if we're going to charge it on the credit card, be able to pay that off because that might be an expensive flight. A tire blows on the car. We didn't anticipate that expense, right? So those are some of the reasons why an emergency fund is super important. And once that's been established, then let's get the money over and above that amount to work harder. Everyone's goals are very different. So I won't give you a kind of a one size fits all approach, right? Because, and that's why a comprehensive planning, entails having conversations with each individual to understand kind of what their goals are and what the time horizon is for those goals, right? For example, they want to make sure retirement looks a certain way. I want to be 65 and traveling the world in retirement. This is how much I need per year to live, right? Somebody might say, what, I'm looking to buy a house in 2 years. So I want to save money for that, but I want to know where to park it. So essentially what I would say is this: when it's time to start investing, really think about what it is that's important to you. And I always counsel in terms of short term. So generally 1 to 3 years, what do you want to see happen? And it could be buying a home. It could be, I want to take, a vacation to Tokyo and I know how much it's going to be in the next year, that sort of thing. Your midterm, so maybe in the next, 3 to 7 years, what are those goals? And then beyond. Long-term goals, and for most people, they talk about retirement. And when you're ready to start deploying money in the market, that's when you really kind of want to pay attention to what you're investing in. Because a lot of it has to do with your time horizon, right? How long that money is going to be sitting in the market, right? How aggressive you want to be with your investments. Basic rule of thumb is the longer the time frame, generally the more aggressive you want to be in terms of where your money is invested. And then also too, on top of time horizon, right, and where your goals are, you also want to pay attention to, and a lot of people don't think about this, but this is super, super important, is really the idea behind investing is, hey, at some point when I need this money, am I going to have access to it? Because if it's sitting in a retirement fund, depending on where you've parked that money, right, you can't touch it without taxes and penalty until age 60. If it's sitting in a regular brokerage account, how long are you going to be able to let it sit in there in terms of what you're going to be paying in capital gains taxes. So it's really important. And hopefully I'm not like kind of overcomplicating this, because you had asked about,
No,
what's the right way to do this.
Please, this is so helpful.
So helpful.
But essentially, when you're ready to start investing in the market, what I would say is it's okay to start deploying a little bit into an account and just start to get your arms around it. But when you want to start to think about strategic investing, take a step back, think about the goals, the time horizon for those goals. What's the money intended for? And now that starts to kind of basically dictate where you should be deploying that money. And then the last piece I would say is, especially for my female clients, a lot of people like to be very aggressive, and they'll talk about cryptocurrency and the next best stock tip. That's not my philosophy. My philosophy is making sure that you are well diversified, and that your money is basically being invested in all asset classes, because the market does this. And sometimes some asset classes do this, and then the next year they may do this. So if you're invested, you've got money kind of dispersed, kind of sprinkled in each of these different buckets. The idea is over the long run, right? As it's doing this, right? The market will take dips, but eventually you'll see your money continuing to grow. So in a nutshell, just wanted to make it as basic as possible, but it's not just about throwing money in the market and hoping for it to grow.
It's so hard, I think, especially as when you're younger, to think in the future and to think, well, this small amount of money, if I put it away, it's not going to make any difference. But it does over time.
It is
grow any little amount. And I was very fortunate. My father was a stockbroker for 34 years, and he got me started with a Roth IRA after my first big paying job out of college. So I've been contributing to my Roth IRA every single year since then. And it's been incredible. And there's some years that I wasn't able to meet the maximum amount that you can pay. And then some years I'm able to pay, because you can only pay into it a certain amount. For somebody just starting out, or for somebody who's not just starting out, because it's never too late, what are some retirement funds, or where would you suggest somebody puts their retirement?
I was going to ask this, Tina. I was actually going to ask you both to explain a Roth IRA for anyone who does, because you hear this all the time. Get a Roth IRA. Like, can you guys kind of walk through, anyone who doesn't know, maybe if you're listening and you don't know what a Roth IRA is, what we just referred to,
I'm going to leave that up to Christine to explain.
Can we explain
much better than me?
Great question, Tina, and kudos to you for getting started early. So an IRA is an individual retirement account, and it's something that you set up for yourself to basically deploy dollars, right, for the purpose of being able to access those dollars later on in retirement. So a traditional IRA basically is money that allows you, for the most part, depending on your income. Well, actually, this is the Roth IRA. So there is a phase out with the Roth. After a certain point in terms of the income that you make, whether you're single or married, right, you're no longer able to contribute. Under that amount, you can. And this year, the max amount is $6,000. And then if you're over 50, it's $7,000. And a Roth IRA basically is taking dollars that you've already paid income tax on, and you're putting it into this bucket. Now it's up to you to pick where the money is being invested, which stocks or mutual funds or whatever it may be. And over time, that money grows as you continue to add to that account. With a Roth IRA, right, you have the ability to access that cash later on in retirement. And when you pull the money out from a Roth IRA, you don't have to pay taxes on it anymore because you've already paid taxes. That makes it a very attractive vehicle for individuals who want to save money for retirement, because there's two things that none of us will have control over in the future. Where taxes are going, we have no control over tax rates, and we have no control of what's going on in the market when it's time to pull that money out. So if the market is taking a dip and you need that money for retirement, not only do you lock in a loss at that time, but it basically decreases the amount sitting in that total fund that can compound over time. So long story short, that's a Roth IRA. And I think that's a wonderful retirement vehicle. You can still also contribute to a traditional IRA. And the difference between the two is, with a traditional IRA, right, you actually are able to take a deduction off of your income that year when you basically deploy to traditional IRA. But later on in retirement, you will have to pay taxes on the money that you pull out. And each has their place in a retirement plan. One is not better than the other, right? You know,
Right.
it really kind of depends on, you know, what your goals are, what your financial situation is, what you're trying to accomplish, right? So I wouldn't recommend one over the other, because comprehensive planning, we don't plan in a vacuum, right? So that has to, we have to pick kind of the right vehicles for something that makes sense for your overall plan. Tina, if I may, like, again, and when you talk about people that are just starting out, let me share something compelling with you. And this is the beauty of compounding returns. This is why it's so important to get started early. You know, most of us, you know, when we talk about retirement, everybody kind of throws around age 65 as the sweet spot, right? And for me and other people, when we think about retirement, we don't necessarily think about stopping work altogether, but maybe that's a time in our life we want to just take our foot off the brake a little bit. Maybe we want to work because we want to, not because we have to.
Yeah.
If you started investing, let's just say the goal was to have $1 million, right, invested and saved and get to $1 million by age 65. If you started at age 25 and you deployed, let's just say, you know, roughly like $350 to $375 a month towards this goal in the market, and let's just assume a very conservative return of about 6 to 7% on your money, very conservative, you'll have $1 million by age 65. If you wait until age 55, you'll have to save about $3,000 a month to be able to do that. So that is the difference in terms of kind of utilizing time. And I think of it, I always joke around with my clients because I say, you know, the stock market is like, basically is like the gasoline. It's like adding gas power, right, to your money, so that your money has the ability to grow at bare minimum, outpace inflation, which a lot of people don't realize that's one of the reasons why we want to invest in the market, because inflation grows generally 2 to 3% year over year, which means that if we want to spend $100,000, which is what we're used to maybe living off of on an annual basis today, that's actually going to be a higher amount. We're actually going to have to spend a higher amount to feel like we're spending $100,000 annually. So that's one of the reasons why the market, you know, investing in the market is so important, because what it's doing is giving you the ability to help your money grow and at least outpace inflation.
Okay, I would love to hear some of your negotiation tips. Tina and I are not negotiating salaries, we're freelancing. So Tina is negotiating rates as a makeup artist. So that is kit cleaning fees, travel days. I'm negotiating rates as an actress on a commercial set, or like usage fees with my manager. I'd just love to hear some of your tips when talking about money and negotiating.
So out of curiosity, what are some of the pain points that you're experiencing in your own negotiation discussions? Or are these kind of just like, this is what you're getting? There's no room to negotiate.
Tina just had a situation.
Yes.
Well, not a situation, it's an interesting story.
Where I wasn't sure what to do, because I was presented, it was a very last minute makeup job. And I was sort of, it was, you know, she needed an answer quick, because it was a really quick turnaround, and it was asking for a lot of different facets. And so I wrote back with a flat rate of what I could do it for. Then she kind of came back and said, you know, that actually puts me in a difficult position, because I don't have that in my budget, and somebody else was going to not charge as much. And then I ended up lowballing myself.
So I'm kind of getting the gist. But you wanted this, that you basically wanted this job or this opportunity.
Yeah, I definitely did. I wanted this job or this opportunity. She sought me out, and, you know, what are your rates? A lot of people ask. And a lot of it is dependent on, you know, how far do I have to go? Do I have to rent a car? Is it within the city? Is it how many people?
Especially with COVID, as a makeup artist, she is spending so much money cleaning, getting extra brushes, PPE. Like, you know, it's definitely more of an ordeal now.
And people's budgets post-COVID are not great. So it's more expensive to do what I do, and people don't have as much money as they did.
Out of curiosity, right? Is that something that you communicate before you share your rates?
Yes. So I try and break it down per category. So if you hire me, here's I have like a menu, like a list of things that I offer, services that I offer. And after this actual incident happened, I went and I purchased a contract, like a makeup artist contract, and to make sure I had every single thing covered, the travel, the menu. And I made a menu of absolutely everything I could think of, so that there are no surprises as the consumer. You know, because I've been that person before too, where it's like, oh, I didn't realize I was paying for that as well.
I love that. And here's why, because what you're doing is you're managing expectations up front before you basically even establish kind of what the rate is that you would be willing to take the job for.
Mm-hmm.
That helps somebody to understand whether or not they can afford you. And you know what, if they're in a bind and they really, really want to work with you and they understand kind of where you're at in terms of what you're going to charge and why, something may be within their budget. You know what I mean? It's something
Yes.
maybe within their budget to get you closer to where you want to be. And I feel like, so when we're talking about negotiation, right? This is, thank you for sharing that example. One of the things that I counsel my clients is that it's really important when you're asking for a raise or a promotion or you're negotiating a salary is to really lay out the value that you bring and help them understand, basically the value that you can, not only that you can bring to that job or that project or this opportunity that you had, but also what you're accustomed to making, because this is really helpful in terms of setting expectations, right? So that somebody, they're a lot less likely to lowball, right? When they know that this is kind of where you've established your, let's call it what it is, your worth.
Yeah. Do you have any go-to verbiage or points for like when somebody comes and says, I can't do this. Can you do it for something cheaper? Can you go low? Can you go lower? I'm a people pleaser. I'm a yes, ma'am. I want to make it work. Well, yeah, I can do you a favor. Do you have any tips for like getting out of that mindset? Because as a woman, a lot of times we don't want to come off as being abrasive or hard to work with or difficult, but also I want to stand up for like what I'm worth.
100%. And Tina, it's really up to you. Like if it's a job that you absolutely want, let's say it's an opportunity to maybe work with particular clientele that you think could potentially lead to more work, and you feel that it's worth it, right, to take a little bit of what I'll call a pay cut. That's up to you. But I always go back to, does it feel good to take this job? And, am I going to go into it inspired, excited about what I'm getting paid? And if it doesn't, I would say take a moment's pause. And the other piece too is that I always like to tell my clients, there's nothing wrong with establishing some boundaries. Like you're basically setting the bar at a certain level. If this person were to call you again in the future, they understand what your rates are. And you may not have to go down this road again in terms of just, such in-depth negotiation. But I always say to my clients to tell somebody that what I'm basically establishing in terms of my fees, my rates, or the salary that I am requesting is commensurate with the experience, the skills, the value that I'm bringing to this opportunity. And here's another tip. Generally, once you kind of establish that, I think as women, then we like to fill the space and go, because I did this and I did this and
Yep.
and what I say is that one of the most powerful things that you can do in a negotiation is once you've made your statement, sit back.
Yep. It's so hard to do. Even now, I'm like, I can't have there be any silence, even in this interview.
So Christine, our backgrounds are, we both went to school for musical theater. And I always say when you go to school for musical theater, you learn how to just be broke and work for nothing. Like that's basically what they teach you. They like drill this into your head. There's always gonna be someone better than you. There's always gonna be someone who'll do it for free. And there's so much free work running around New York City as performers. And there's so much talent in New York City, so much that there is someone who will do it free. So again, a lot of our 20s, paycheck to paycheck, but also was, oh my God, I'm so lucky to just be doing this for free because I'm so lucky to be asked. And it actually takes a while to get out of that mindset where I feel like some of my friends who are in the more 9-to-5 crowd maybe kind of hit that, milestone with like 26, 27. But because as a performer, there's so much unpaid work, but it can be an amazing opportunity, but it doesn't mean you might get paid in a Metro card, but it might be reviewed in the New York Times, but you might have gotten a $20 stipend. It's a very weird business. It does take a lot of unlearning to just not feel so lucky to be there, but to say, oh, actually, here's my rate for this, you know?
Understood. And, Alex, and I do appreciate that, and listen, early on, even in my career, my first job right out of school, I made $19,000 a year. I was living in New York City. I'm from New York originally as well.
Wow.
I lived in the Upper West Side. A paycheck and a half went to rent, and I had to somehow had to figure out how to eat on literally $200 a month. And I paid my dues. We're talking 80-hour work weeks. 3 different senior execs, staying in the office till midnight. Very difficult to negotiate early on in my career too, because I was green and I was learning how to kind of basically succeed, right? To survive at that time, right? In a very kind of corporate dog eat dog kind of environment. But what I will say is this, as you continue on in your career, right? My hope is that, you have the ability to become a lot more selective with the free opportunities where you're working for free, or, you're not necessarily getting paid ideally what you like. But I would say, at this stage of the game, are you able then to kind of weigh, kind of what are the benefits of taking this job at a little bit of a less of a rate that you're used to or would like, if it's actually going to translate into experience that you want to have, or working with clientele that you feel could potentially,
right,
translate into more work opportunities and that sort of thing. But then this also goes back to, how do we now create a financial independence platform that allows us to be a lot more picky and a lot more choosy? If you've got 6 months in the bank of emergency savings, hey, maybe I don't need to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go, pay for gas and drive, 100 miles away just to, because it's not worth it. It's costing me my sanity, and probably, what, I'd much rather spend this time maybe being free and trying to network to get some other jobs, that are
absolutely.
Exactly. We are so grateful, Tina and I, to be able to do exactly that, be more selective now. And it's a very happy phase that we, that we moved into.
Yes.
I'm happy for you.
Okay, still, yes, we have reached this new point in our lives where we can be a little bit more selective and say no. For me, at least, I know money is still a huge stressor in my life. And there's always this sort of mentality in the back of my mind of coming from scarcity and that it's all going to go away. What are some tips for women, especially, to understand that they are deserving of financial freedom?
Oh my gosh, that's such a great question. I mean, if we had another 3 hours, I would walk us through literally a mental mindset, exercise here. Here's the thing. I think what we need to remember is that money is a form of energy currency. It really is. And so when it causes us stress and it makes us feel like we're coming from a place of lack, what we don't realize is how we respond to opportunities and how we respond to certain situations kind of keep us in this limited mindset. And I'm sure maybe you've heard of this before. One of the things that I like to do, and what I like to coach my clients to do, is just to take a moment, right? And just, whether it's 5 or 10 minutes, and just think about the things that you're grateful for and that you are able to do with the money that you have. Even if there's credit card debt, even if there's student loan debt, whatever it may be. I'm grateful for my home, that I'm living in today. And I'm grateful for, the ability to treat myself to a latte this morning. I don't do it every day, but I'm doing it today. And I'm grateful for that, because when we feel more confident and relaxed about money, it's a lot easier to negotiate what we want to get paid. When we're coming from a place of scarcity, we go, I'm not too happy about the offer that they extended to me, but I really need that job. And I don't know when the next job's going to be. So I better take this. And, because, and then we get into that place. And when someone says, hey, not only am I not going to pay you what you're worth, but on top of that, here's a couple of other things that might actually be financially detrimental to you. You're like, it just reinforces, right? And kind of feeds into more of the same. There are different ways that we can get around that. I often say, look, it could be a friend that is just great with money. It could be a financial advisor, right? It could be a parent, right? That's been able to, how wonderful that you've learned money skills in the home, because generally that doesn't happen. Financial education generally doesn't happen in the home, and frustratingly enough, it doesn't happen in schools. With that said, I would lean on somebody and just say, hey, I would love to talk to you about where I'm at. I would love to get some tips and some help. I've actually suggested to women that I know, one of the things that we really need to do as women, and why I appreciate so much being on your podcast with you, is that we need to talk about money more. Women in general, and this is nothing wrong with the stuff that we talk about, but generally when we get together, right, we do talk about our work, right? What we're passionate about, our loved ones, partner, spouse, kids, whatever it may be. And listen, I'm all about self-care. I love me a massage. I'm right there with you. But we talk about self-care a lot, and we don't realize that self-care can also include conversations about money. When we get together with the girls and we're pouring a glass of wine, we'll talk about all these things, but nobody really says, hey, and I'm not saying that this is the question that has to be posed, but nobody says, hey, how the S&P 500 treat you this week? We just don't bring it up.
No.
And we really need to start bringing that into the conversation, being natural about it. And I know that there's it's a very emotionally charged subject, but the more we talk about it and the more transparent we are about it, the more we'll learn from each other. Now, I've kind of said to even clients of mine, let's have when we have a girls' night, instead of a book club kind of thing, everybody do a little bit of research. Let's all identify a pain point. What's the best credit cards out there, in terms of interest rates, 0% credit cards, what does it look like to maybe transfer balance? What's the best high yield savings account my money should be in for my emergency fund? Somebody else do that research. Hey, you know what? I just got onto Ellevest. I want to share some tips about how easy it is to get onto this. And let's make that the point of the discussion, and someone host it and buy the round of cocktails that night. But if you do this on a weekly basis and you start to elevate the conversation and we support each other, I really believe that we're going to see some change.
I love that. And if you take the shame and the power that money has away, and it just becomes another topic of conversation.
And for so long, it was considered impolite, but I really think it's changing with our age group. I mean, Tina and I have a really good photographer friend. The three of us got together after dinner, and she told us all about how she was saving for her potential vacation house, and we really, really got into it. And so I do think it is changing. But yeah, for so long, it was very impolite to share what you made, or you felt weird asking, or all of those things.
Impolite for women.
Yes.
For women.
Not for men. Exactly.
The guys get together on the golf course, when they get together in the bars, having a few beers, trust me, right? I mean, we've seen it. We've heard about it. They talk about money. Hey, dude, I'm investing this. Have you heard of this? That is such a normal part of their conversation.
Yeah.
And we actually now, I think as women, we need to embrace it and kind of normalize it for us. And it's not about being nosy. It's about empowering each other.
And what a time to start normalizing these conversations after we've all been through hell this year. Everyone's finances, I don't care how much money you have, we've all been affected. We're all starting over in some little way. So let's just start fresh. Christine, I cannot even handle how many incredible tidbits and how much knowledge you have. Before we wrap up, we really want to ask you some rapid fire, just fun questions.
Oh, I can't wait.
Okay. First of all, do you have a favorite cocktail?
Oh, yeah. Well, my go-to, so it is my favorite. It's Tito's vodka, soda, extra lime.
Oh, you can't go wrong. It's the perfect drink. Where are you sipping this perfect Tito's soda lime? What's your favorite travel destination?
I mean, I don't know if I'd order a Tito's if I was there, but it would be Paris, France, hands down my favorite city in the world. 2
beauty products that are just your go-tos, you can't live without.
On the very high end, I use a skincare line called Umir, which is phenomenal. And it's kind of it's kind of this hidden brand that a lot of people don't know about, but it's all based on high potent, high quality botanicals, right? Oh. And I'm about to turn 50 this year, so I swear.
What? No, you're not.
Oh my God.
No.
You look amazing.
No way.
Thank you. No,
okay, hold on. So now we need to know a little bit more about your skin.
A little bit more.
Because your skin, I definitely was guessing at least 10 years at least 10 years younger than what you just said.
Appreciate you. Thank you. No, I mean, November, I'll be turning 50. So listen, and it's hands down, this product is fantastic. I've been using it the last couple of years. It is pricey, but it
works.
It's just high grade plant botanicals, and it's just, I love what it does for my skin. Part of it too, and people ask me about, sure, genetics being what they are, great. But I do believe in life. If you are happy, if you are peaceful, if you're living your life with purpose, if you love what you do for work, if you're surrounded by, just people that love, support, care for you, and you do the same, like happiness is really, I believe, is the fountain of youth.
He must be very happy.
I mean, I have my days when I'm not, but on the scale of like happiness, I would say most days the pendulum swings in that direction, you know, and it goes back to some of the things that we talked about, like just gratitude, you know, starting a day with a gratitude practice.
Oh, I love that.
You know, getting grounded in the stuff that we're blessed to have. And then on the other side, right, the pendulum swings way in the other direction, but coconut oil, my favorite body moisturizer. Cheap coconut oil from Trader Joe's, extra virgin. I mean, your skin is basically your largest organ, so I just don't want to slather a whole host of like products that aren't natural on it, and I love it.
You know what? So does my mother. My mother is 57 and she has coconut. She looks amazing. She's in great shape.
She does look amazing.
Puts coconut oil everywhere. So
well, that was great. Just don't put it on like 5 minutes before you put on a silk blouse. No
right.
Got it.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. So Christine, who is a woman that inspires you?
Without question, my mother. She is, when people ask, like, who is the one person that's been your professional coach, your, spiritual coach, your mentor in life, it's been my mom, and I wouldn't be who I was today if it wasn't for her. So yes.
She sounds like an absolutely incredible woman and strong and smart.
She's a fighter, that one. And, when people have conversations with her, they really get a good laugh out of it. She knows how to mangle a lot of great English expressions and make them her own. And I've posted some of them, and some of them are not necessarily PC to share.
Okay, Christine. So where can we find you? And if someone wants to work with you, where can we look you up? On Instagram, Twitter, email, whatever you want to share.
Thank you for asking. So you can find me on Instagram and Facebook, Christine Joy Sarno. I also have my own website, ChristineJoyLuxSarno.com. And I encourage your audience, if they want to kind of start to get access to some of my teachings, to go ahead and just sign up for my weekly newsletter. So really good stuff that I'm going to be sharing, and we'll be sharing a course later on this year. So, if they just want to be in the know in terms of when the course is going to be launching and have first access to it, they can go to my website and sign up.
That I will be signing up for that newsletter.
And me too. And all of this information, everybody, will be available in our description box, episode notes of this episode. So if you missed anything, you can go and check it. We'll link all of Christine's places you can find her in the episode notes of this episode.
Yes. Christine, thank you so much. We were so honored to be able to talk with you. Thank you for sharing all of your knowledge. This was amazing.
It was my pleasure. You ladies rock. Thank you for having me.
You rock.